Let's talk comedies. Welcome back to yet another episode. Today we're going to be talking about comedies, which is a genre that I seldom talk about on this channel. I mean, I'm sure, of course, I've talked about comedies before, but I've never had a whole video dedicated to comedies. Now, my favorite comedies are probably the 80s and the 90s. I grew up in the 90s. I love the 80s comedies, so I grew up watching the 80s and 90s ones. So those are really the ones that still stick with me. Not a big fan of aughts comedies. Of course, there are aughts comedies that I do enjoy, but I noticed while I was looking at the films that I've watched, I haven't seen many comedies from the 2010s. So, this video, I'm going to talk about a few that I've seen over the last couple weeks. I've been kind of knocking out a few that I missed back in the day, ones that I was somewhat interested in. So let's jump right into the first. But before we do, I'd love to know what your favorite comedies from 2010 to 2019 are. Feel free to leave those down in the comments below. Yeah, so I don't own all of these. I do own the first one, and I'm going to talk about them in the order that I watched them. I can't find my Blu-ray. I don't know where I put it. I watched it on Blu-ray a couple weeks ago. It must be in my pile over there. Either way, that is The Other Guys. This is a movie I actually tried to watch back when it came out. I want to say it was like 2011, something like that. And I just couldn't really get into it. I watched like 20 minutes of it, 15. I just couldn't really get into the humor. Watching it now, I really like this movie. I mean, it's like a solid 3.5 out of 5. Not a huge fan of Will Ferrell. Not the biggest fan of Mark Wahlberg either. But they handle this movie really well and have great chemistry. And the writing is just absurdist humor, random humor at its finest. Adam McKay is great at that, I'm finding. Adam McKay is responsible for Anchorman and all those kinds of goofy Will Ferrell movies. And this is his best that I've seen. Better than Anchorman 1 and 2. I really, really enjoyed The Other Guys. And this serves as both a deconstruction of the buddy cop genre and a parody. It's simultaneous. It's more a deconstruction and a satire, actually, because it's ridiculous at points. For example, Will Ferrell's character is this really uptight police accountant type. And come to find out that he has a past where he was a pimp in college named Gator, and he had all these women, and the way he describes it, he's not saying it like he was a pimp, but it's very clear that he was a pimp. And it's just hilarious. So every once in a while, he'll break out of his reserved sort of new him, and he'll just be like, you better get my shit over here, and it's just like the funniest shit you could imagine, coming from Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell's really, really funny in this movie. Mark Wahlberg is playing it straight, and he's your straight man here, but he still handles it really well, very deftly, and he's very, very funny in this movie. And his character is more of your sort of like, he's a good cop, but he's just like insane. Like he doesn't think things through, but he gets shit done, He's sort of like a parody of Lethal Weapon's Riggs in a lot of ways, played by Mel Gibson. And I guess you could look at it like Will Ferrell's character is a little bit more like Danny Glover, more technical, more reserved. Either way, you could dig into the movie like that quite a bit. Anyway, it's a really funny movie. I really, really enjoyed it more than I thought I was. It also has The Rock and Samuel L. Jackson in the first 15 or 20 minutes or so, and I'm not going to spoil that. Check out The Other Guys. The next one I watched was McGruber. McGruber is a movie I have to pick up now, because talk about deconstructing the 80s action genre and satirizing it and making fun of it. This movie does that perfectly. Who knew? I had no idea. I had never seen any of the old SNL skits or anything. I had heard of them. Maybe I'd seen a couple, and they were funny. But this really doesn't have much to do with MacGyver. I mean, it does. It's a parody of MacGyver too, because this guy has all these stupid contraptions that he thinks are going to get him through situations, and they don't. For example, he has like a ball of yarn at like a fucking gunfight at the end of the movie, and he's like, I don't use guns. And just like, so ridiculous. And again, this is really a parody of the machismo-laden 80s action films that we all know and love with Stallone and Schwarzenegger and Norris. That's really what this is. It has so many funny scenes, like a big recruitment scene that ends so terribly for all of the characters involved. You know, he's going around getting his old team together, and it just has this twist that is just absolutely hilarious. Will Forte and Kristen Wiig are in this movie, and I think Ryan Philippe, if I'm not mistaken, he's your straight guy in this. Kristen Wiig and Will Forte are fantastic. They really work off of each other well. You see a lot of Will Forte's ass and frontal area quite a bit, I'll say, which is fine. Not for me. I'm sure there are some people that enjoyed it, but it's really weird, some of the things that he does with his asshole. So that's all I'll say there. Yeah, it's a really funny movie, and it has good action. The action is well shot. McGruber, guys, if you're a fan of 80s, 90s action movies, and you probably are if you're watching this channel, you gotta check out McGruber. Little SNL movie that came out of nowhere. Who knew? I had no idea this was actually good. I really enjoyed it. Oh, he also has his theme music, and he rips his radio out of his car so that he could carry his theme music around with him. How awesome is that? That gives you an idea what this movie's all about. Check it out. McGruber. Next up for me was kind of a step down. I am not a huge fan of Kevin Hart. I love Ice Cube, not so much as an actor, but as a rapper for sure. Just as a personality, I like Ice Cube quite a bit. I checked out Ride Along. Ride Along is another buddy cop comedy that is kind of like Training Day, in ways, I guess. It even references Training Day with some of the dialogue, things like that. So it definitely is like a buddy cop comedy version of that, but not exactly. So Kevin Hart's character plays a lot of Call of Duty type video games, and he thinks he could be a cop, so he's sort of like a trainee. And Ice Cube's character happens to be the brother of his girl. And so he gets a ride along, and the whole idea is Ice Cube is trying to scare him out of wanting to be a cop. So that's the kind of the gist. Yeah, it's okay. It's not bad. It's directed by Tim Story, rather dryly, to be honest. There isn't much visual flair here. It doesn't look particularly great. It's not particularly funny, but there's a lot of chemistry and a good heart to the movie. So I do enjoy it for what it is, and it's pretty funny. It has its moments. Kevin Hart is just doing his Kevin Hart thing, which is fine. You know, a lot of short jokes, a lot of things like that. I just am not too crazy about Kevin Hart as a comedic actor. I think he's fine. Just doesn't really make me laugh too much. He does make me laugh in the Jumanji movies, though. Those are his best movies by far. So that is Ride Along. I do want to see the sequel. Maybe it's a little bit better. Who knows? Maybe it's a little worse. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. But that is Ride Along. Next up, we have a movie that is my least favorite in this video. That is The Campaign. Just misses the mark for me. What can I say? It's a political comedy that isn't very clever, that isn't very smart. I think it doesn't have much going for it. Will Ferrell plays a Democrat North Carolina politician, and Zach Galifianakis plays a North Carolina Republican politician. And Will Ferrell's character is the incumbent. He's sort of not had anybody running against him, sort of thing, things like that. So he's very comfortable, he's very crooked, he's very corrupt, he doesn't work at all, he just F's off and drinks, margaritas in his pool, like a lot of our politicians do, like a lot of politicians do. They don't work for us, they work for themselves. And so, this Republican candidate comes up, Zach Galifianakis, who actually cares about the people and has some good ideas and rallies people behind him, and Will Ferrell's like reeling. He's like, uh-oh, looks like I have to do some work here and try to keep my seat. And so that's what the movie's about, but I picked it up because it was directed by Jay Roach, who did the Austin Powers movies, and then, or at least the first two, I think he did all three. And it was produced by Adam McKay, and the story was by Adam McKay. Now, the script wasn't by Adam McKay, which I think is why it doesn't have any of that absurdist humor, any of that random, weird humor. I wish it had more of that. I wish it was more satirical, more biting, more of a satire. There's really isn't. It's just kind of not satirizing. It's just pointing out how things are. It's just kind of like like a regular political movie. Like, the comedy could have been taken out for the most part. It's not very funny anyway. And a baby gets punched, so that's interesting, in slow motion. The Campaign, not my favorite. This might be exiting the collection. Not exactly sure yet. The Campaign. Do you guys like it? Let me know down in the comments below. And last, and best, Bridesmaids. This is a movie I missed back in 2011, I believe, when it came out. This movie was big. Paul Feig, a bunch of the SNL alum from the time, Kristen Wiig, Melissa McCarthy, they've never been better, in my opinion. This movie is fantastic. It's funny, it's dramatic, it'll make you cry, it'll make you laugh. I love Kristen Wiig. I think she's a great comedic actor. I also think she's adorable. And this movie just has a lot of things going for it. The main thing that I love about this movie, I have never seen a comedy that feels like it was written and done by a bunch of females, by a group of females. Paul Feig did direct this, but I know Kristen Wiig was helping with that. She helped write it. She wrote the story, things like that. So it's a very woman-centric comedy, a crude woman-centric comedy, and I haven't seen those. And it's such a fresh perspective. I can't tell you how fresh it is. And it also makes you realize that men and women aren't too different. And I don't know if it was setting out to do that, but I think it was, you know. I could get into deeper sociological things here, you know, social things here, but I'm not going to. I just think it's really interesting to see a crude comedy from the perspective of women, and it's handled really well. Melissa McCarthy is really funny in this and sort of at home in this sort of role. Who else is in it? Kristen Wiig, Maya Rudolph, is that her name? Maya Rudolph? Yep, Rose Byrne. Rose Byrne sort of plays the... Oh yeah, the story is about this 30-something woman played by Kristen Wiig, who is having a hard time finding like a good relationship or prospects for marriage, things like that, and she's sleeping with, what's his name? Oh man, the guy from Mad Men. I forget his name. But either way, she's sleeping with him, but he just wants her for the sex. He doesn't care about her at all. And you really feel everything she's going through as she just hits a bad stroke of luck. And I could relate to this. I'm in my 30s. I've hit a bad stroke of luck over the last year. And I could relate to this. And it really... Oh yeah, she ends up having to move back in with her mom, which is something I hope I never have to do. But still, I love my mom. Don't get me wrong. But still, it humbled me in a lot of ways, and I really connected with all these characters. And it's just a slice of life, matter-of-fact kind of film, but it does have the main idea with Rose Byrne, or Maya Rudolph getting married, and Rose Byrne and Kristen Wiig sort of vying for the top bridesmaid position. I forget what it's called. You know, that kind of thing. And they've been, Maya Rudolph and Kristen Wiig have been friends their whole life. Rose Byrne is just coming in now, but she thinks she's her best friend. It's those kind of dynamics, and it's really funny. But this is just a great movie, guys. Check out Bridesmaids if you haven't already. I watched the unrated version on DVD here. I will be picking this up on Blu-ray when I find it. It's great. That's going to do it for this little 2010s comedy video. I realized that I hadn't talked about comedies on my channel very much at all, so I plan to go back to the 90s now, and the aughts, and the 80s, and even further back to talk about some comedies that I really do love, because it is a genre I go back to a couple times a year. So I'd love to know what your favorite comedies from 2010 to 2019 are. Feel free to leave those down in the comments below, and we're going to try to roll this. It worked. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel and want to see more videos like it, go ahead and hit the subscribe button as well as the little bell for notifications. I also have a Patreon and t-shirts, links are in the description below. Anyway, guys, I will see you all next time. TheBoredCyborg is out. Let's talk comedies. Perfect intro!